Support for this podcast comes from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative, connecting communities with the resources, infrastructure, and networks to ensure a vibrant local free press.
From KVPR in Fresno, this is Central Valley Daily. It's Tuesday, October 29th. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. As we inch closer to Election Day, how does Vice President Kamala Harris's record as a prosecutor affect her in the race?
She knows the system. She's been a public servant for a very long time. I think it's important to have somebody who knows how to navigate those systems, just so that way, otherwise, how can we inflict change?
We'll hear more thoughts from criminal justice advocates in just a few minutes. But first, today's headlines. Most California Republicans in Congress won't publicly commit to certifying the 2024 presidential election results. That's according to new reporting from our California newsroom partner, Cal Matters. Jenna Peterson has the details.
Only 4 of the 12 Republicans representing California in Congress have confirmed they will uphold the election results. While none of these Republicans have publicly stated they would not certify the election, most Republican incumbents and GOP swing district challengers did not respond when Cal Matters asked if they would certify the vote. Those include Doug LaMalfa, Kevin Kiley, Vince Fong, David Valadeo, Jay Obernolte, Mike Garcia, Michelle Steele, Daryl Issa, and Matt Gunderson, candidate for the toss-up 49th District in San Diego County. These candidates have also not publicly confirmed anywhere else that they'd certify. John Fleischman, former executive director of the California Republican Party, says he believes all of California's congressional Republicans will certify. It's just politically safer to not weigh in publicly.
You don't really want to inflame kind of the conservative grassroots side either, because you need them for your get out the vote. So this is an issue that's divisive for Republicans, and so I don't think they want to talk about it much.
In January 2021, 7 of the 11 California Republicans in Congress refused to certify the 2020 election, boosting former President Donald Trump's false claim that he lost in a rigged vote.
That was Jenna Peterson with Cal Matters. A new investigation finds a Central Valley nursery owned by Republican Congressman John Duarte has a history of safety violations. KVPR's Esther Quintanilla reports.
California regulators cited the Duarte nursery for multiple workplace safety violations from 2008 through 2022, while Duarte was the head of the company. The nursery has been owned by the congressman and his family for several decades. Over the course of those years, an investigation by the LA Times found the nursery was cited 8 times and was fined more than $20,000. Some of the violations include numerous workplace injuries, accusations of wage theft, and in one case, the death of an employee. The violations occurred before Duarte won a seat in Congress. A representative for the Duarte campaign told the LA Times the nursery saw an injury rate below industry average over the last decade, and that they are, quote, proud of our safety record. Duarte is fighting in a highly contentious race in the 13th Congressional District against Democrat Adam Gray. Whoever wins could determine which party controls Congress. For KVPR News, I'm Esther Quintanilla.
California's planning to ramp up sales of electric motorcycles as part of its efforts to battle climate change. The State Air Resources Control Board is introducing new regulations that would impose a credit system for manufacturers. The system aims to encourage electric motorcycle sales while creating tighter standards for new gas-powered bikes. After a public hearing, the Air Resources Board will vote on the proposed rules on November 7th. The Kern County District Attorney's Office is now saying accusations against a candidate for supervisor are, quote, baseless and unfounded. Last week, Kimberly Salas, who's running for Kern County's 5th district seat, was accused of using taxpayer funds while attending a campaign event. Her opponent, incumbent Leticia Perez, made the complaint. Perez is also currently under investigation by the DA's office.
Tired of spending time and money on vehicle maintenance and repairs? Make this October Car-tober when you donate a car, truck, RV, or boat to KVPR. Spare yourself the headache of never-ending repair bills or the hassles of selling a car yourself. Your vehicle donation is tax-deductible, and it supports our Valley Newsroom and all your favorite public radio shows. Visit kvpr.org/cars to get started.
And now to our main story. Before Vice President Kamala Harris ran for president, she was a prosecutor. She served 7 years as the district attorney of San Francisco and another 6 as the attorney general of California. Harris's reputation during that time was mixed. While some view her as too soft on crime, like when she refused to pursue the death penalty for a man who shot and killed a police officer, others view her as too tough, like when she tried to prosecute a mentally ill woman who'd been shot by police. One demographic for whom this distinction may be very important is people who are either currently or formerly incarcerated. KVPR's Rachel Livinal has been talking to those in the criminal justice system about their thoughts and intentions regarding the election. And Rachel joins me now to talk about her findings. First, Rachel, what initially sparked you to want to look into this topic?
So anyone who is looking at our presidential candidates knows something of Kamala Harris's background in law enforcement, but one demographic that doesn't get all that much of a voice in politics is those who are or have been incarcerated. I wanted to simply understand how they viewed Harris as the prosecutor, but also as a presidential candidate, because they are people who have been prosecuted themselves. I spoke to formerly and currently incarcerated people in the Valley, along with several who have been strong advocates for them. I was basically testing some assumptions about this community and their view of current politics.
Can incarcerated people actually vote? How much voice do they have in elections?
That's a good question. People who've committed felonies and are currently in prison can't legally vote, but many in jail can, or who are awaiting trial can. Additionally, anyone who's gotten out of prison has the right to vote as well, no matter their prior crime.
So what exactly did you find? How do they view Harris as a candidate?
Well, most that I spoke with thought quite fondly of Harris as a presidential candidate, even when they knew her background. I went to a graduation a few weeks ago at Valley State Prison in Chowchilla. These students were the first to graduate with a bachelor's degree out of Fresno State after taking classes while in prison. One graduate was Henry Inocencio. He's 45 years old from Alameda County and has spent 22 years behind bars. He's serving a sentence for murder, but he said to me that Harris is actually part of the reason he achieved the degree. For instance, in 2005, Harris did introduce an initiative related to education while she was a prosecutor. It was called Back on Track, and it gave first-time nonviolent offenders the chance to enroll in education and job training courses and therapy.
Kamala Harris is a part of that change, giving people like myself a second opportunity, a second look.
Another inmate I spoke to felt the same way, and both said they would vote for her if they could. Esteban Nunez offered another perspective, also in favor of Harris. He is formerly incarcerated and now works as a consultant for many criminal justice advocacy organizations. He says Harris is an appealing presidential candidate because her history as a prosecutor gives her knowledge that not everyone has.
She knows the system. She's been a public servant for a very long time. I think it's important to have somebody who knows how to navigate those systems just so that way, otherwise, how can we inflict change?
Okay, did you find anyone who was more skeptical of her background?
Yes, Jesse Scaccia. He's a media professor at Fresno State who teaches students at the same prison in Chowchilla and advocates for the incarcerated. He's never served time himself. And he told me that he's still conflicted about who to vote for.
And so many of the policies that end people up here are rooted in racism, are rooted in classism, and are rooted in anti-literacy and being biased against people with lower literacy. So I believe in a more beautiful world than these candidates do. So I am not open voice supporting either of them.
Scaccia mentioned policies. When talking about criminal justice reform, what do people expect could happen if Harris becomes president?
Unlike Scaccia, many who I spoke with think Harris could introduce policies that would benefit those in the criminal justice system. Like Claudia Gonzalez, she's formerly incarcerated and has been a long-time advocate for other formerly incarcerated folks in the Valley. She says she's seen Harris's views evolve in a way she thinks is more just and holistic. She also thinks Harris could bring California's model of criminal justice reform to the White House.
California advocates are able to hold her more accountable and be like, hey, you're from California or from Oakland, you're from the Bay Area, and we saw how these things turned out in California and what we've been able to do in California, why don't we do that on a national scope? And so I think there's a lot of room for policy to be able to be crafted under Harris.
So obviously this is just a tiny slice of the general perspective. How do these people you spoke with compare to the rest of the nation? Is this a pretty fair representation of what people in the criminal justice system think?
Well, formerly and currently incarcerated folks are not a monolith. I spoke with 2 advocates who work with formerly incarcerated people, and they told me political views do vary. And a survey just released by the Marshall Project, which is a news organization that focuses on coverage of inequities in the justice system, showed that broadly, currently incarcerated people favor Donald Trump more than Harris, especially among white male inmates. But they also found more are in favor of Harris than Biden when he was a Democratic candidate. A large share of them also identify as independent, and for those who know about her record, they believe she was tough on crime.
KVPR reporter Rachel Livinal, thanks so much for bringing us this insightful reporting.
Thanks for having me, Liz.
And that does it for today. If you like what you've been hearing on Central Valley Daily, help support the show by leaving a 5-star rating in your podcast app. Even better, share the show with a friend. We really appreciate it. Today's episode was produced by Jonathan Linden and KVPR with support from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. Find the latest local news anytime at kvpr.org.